Thanks everybody for joining us. This is our weekly HR Fireside chat. If this is your first time, these chats are really supposed to be for you guys to help keep you guys informed with stuff that's going on campus and any timely topics that might affect you. This week, we are bringing back our guest speaker, Matt Neese, to talk to us about surviving 2020. And last time he was with us, it pretty much took the entire time, which was perfect. And we got some great information from him. My team debriefed this morning, and we have no HR updates for you today. So you guys get this entire time with Matt. Please remember that this is a really kind of a free forum in which we encourage as much participation as possible. So feel free to unmute, and tell us what you are thinking and feeling based on what Matt or I brings to the table. And also, if you are in a place where you'd rather chat, go ahead and chat. If you don't want to be identified, you can private chat me, and I can just say that your comment or your question, and I will not divulge your identity. So without further ado, Matt, what do you got for us on part 2 of Surviving 2020?
Part 2. This needs to be like a 40-part series. Well, I'm going to see if I can run multiple screens here and run I have a few slides for us, but I also want to see if I can kind of keep an eye on my gallery view of you all. I'm going to strongly encourage / invite you to turn on your camera so that we can see your face. And then I'm going to also strongly encourage you to do everything you can to keep from working for the next 50 minutes. Okay. I know that it is the most enticing thing in the world to multitask and do emails while also be in a meeting. But I found that it helps us be more present if we can, have the video going and then just kind of have it be a norm that we're going to be here now in the name of mindfulness and mental health. So to get started, what I want you all to do is follow me in a very classic and popular mental health intervention, and it's born from what's called EMDR. Many of you may have heard of this, but EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and it has become the most evidence-based and popular intervention for trauma. Okay, and more people that are researching the psychological impacts of the pandemic are now viewing it through a trauma lens, big T and small t trauma. And so what I want you to do, there's a variation, okay, that sort of depends on your level of vulnerability. You can either close your eyes and imagine a triangle, actually visualize a triangle and a ball at the side of the triangle, and then you watch the ball go up one side of the triangle and down the other. Okay, slowly. We're not trying to make ourselves dizzy here, but we're just visualizing the ball going up and down, back and forth, and maybe even actually letting your eyes move as you're tracing the ball. Keep doing that as I explain the other intervention. If that's not your jam, closing your eyes and watching the ball, you can do what's called a butterfly hug, okay? And so if you're able, make the butterfly with your hands, with the two thumbs touching, and you put it right underneath your collarbone. And there's kind of this soft spot underneath our collarbone here, if you can see me. And the idea is to tap back and forth on that space. Okay. And then lastly, if neither one of those work for you, if you just put your hands on your knees and tap back and forth, that will also accomplish what we're going for. This is what's called bilateral stimulation. And the reason EMDR works is that it mimics REM sleep. The magic of REM sleep is that we are able to process the trauma or the stress from our previous day, file it away, and be able to think about it differently the next morning. Without REM sleep, we lose that opportunity, and we may wake up the next morning just as stressed and triggered as we were the day before. In the moment, since we can't just put ourselves straight into REM sleep, we try to mimic it via bilateral stimulation. And so tracing the ball over the triangle is one way to move your eyes back and forth. The butterfly hug with the tapping and the tapping on the knees is really connecting the right and left hemisphere of the brain. Okay. So in moments when you feel really flooded or triggered or anxious, if you can find a space to either tap or visualize what I've just shared with you, it helps ground you. Okay. It's not as effective as REM sleep, but it certainly brings about the benefit. I'd invite you to come back to me and listen for a minute. I'm going to actually model some vulnerability here and share with you a story that I haven't shared in any large group and hardly with any individuals at all yet. And I'm going to try to put this image up on the screen. Okay. Hopefully y'all can see a bicycle loaded with bags. No. Okay. Hopefully y'all can see a bicycle loaded with bags. Okay. Let me tell you about my month real quick. About a month ago, my wife and I got COVID. And it was not fun, especially since we had done everything that we had thought we could do to avoid COVID. We don't know where we got it, how we contracted it. My two little girls were okay, 5 and 2. They were okay, but my wife and I both got it. And in a 2-week time span, experienced all of the primary documented symptoms. One symptom would go away, and the same day, another one would come in. And it was wild. And I thought to myself, sort of oddly, what an interestingly perfect virus to sort of capture how 2020 has been. You overcome one hurdle, and there it is, right in front of you is another hurdle to overcome. And so I share that both to say, like, that I've tried really hard to be safe, and we still contracted it, and we got through it, and it was really tough. And there has been some residual lingering effects, even as we've been cleared to go back to work, and all of those other principal symptoms subsided. And so I'm dealing with the aftermath of COVID, and get the call that my aunt, who's been battling cancer for the last several years up in Chalice, has hours to live. And so my dad and my mom and my sister and I, we pile in the car and we get ourselves to Chalice. And we made it luckily in time to say our goodbyes to her. A very bittersweet thing. She passed while we were there. And, you know, it was time for her to go. As people know that, you know, it's a difficult thing to battle cancer that long. And so we spend the night and we have a great time with our loved ones that are there. And then we get in the car and we come back through Chalice to Stanley, and we're going to go over the pass, Stanley back into Boise through Lowman. We get to Stanley and it starts to snow. I love the snow. It's amazing. And I start to get all nostalgic about Christmas time and the holidays and how connected to people and just this higher sort of energy that I feel. And so we start to climb the pass. I see this guy that's pushing his bike. This is the best picture I could find. He's pushing his bike in this snowstorm, and this person also has duffel bags hanging off of his shoulders as well. This bike is loaded, and I'm thinking, yep, that is about exactly how I have felt this year. I am pushing this bike, carrying all of these bags up this hill, and then it starts to snow. And I'm thinking as I'm driving, gosh, I really should help that person. You know, the helper inside of me is thinking, what should I do to help this person? And I don't do it. And so I'm having this existential crisis inside. And then it starts to really snow. And it's like sticking, and there's inches and inches of snow on the trees. And it's just beautiful, and it's peaceful, and it's so quiet. Then I get lost in the beauty of the world. And I'm thinking, gosh, this is just what I tell everybody to do, is be here now. And as I am in that moment, totally lost in the sort of surrounding and the beauty and all of that, guess what happens? I get a freaking speeding ticket. I'm going 63 and a 55, and I'm lost in my thoughts and connecting to the universe. And the next thing I know, there's a policeman behind me, and I get a speeding ticket. Totally my fault, but I'm just trying to depict how life has so oddly been up and down in the last, 2020. I share that to say that, this is life. And I hope that my story is resonating with some of you. I'm sure that it is. Just in the moments that I spoke with Casey just now, we're all going through so much more than work stress, life, so many things that we can't control. And I want to kind of just start out the gate with that kind of narrative. This is pretty close to where we left off last time, but I wanted to talk about these stressors for helping professionals, which I personally see all of you as. You're at the forefront, regardless of your position. People are looking up to you. They're looking to you for answers. They're looking to you for guidance. They're looking to you for modeling, advice, all of that. These are some principal threats for helping professionals when they're in a situation where people are coming to them traumatized or extremely stressed out. Burnout is obviously one of them, and likely we all know about that. Vicarious trauma is something that I want you to all be aware of. And I couple that with the secondary traumatic stress. So it's been researched and documented now that says you do not have to be the person to firsthand experience the trauma to experience PTSD. Even the supporters of the person that has experienced the trauma firsthand can develop PTSD. And I want you to be thinking now and sort of through the rest of this conversation today, is this resonating with me? Am I experiencing burnout? Am I burnout? Or am I crispy and really on the edge? Have I experienced trauma, either big T trauma, like the death of a loved one, or small T traumas of students coming to me with their own traumas, or the uncertainty of the future, or, I'm thinking at least that many of us actually saw George Floyd die. That video is so real, and it's so powerful and traumatic, and it's hard not to let that sort of just work its way into your soul and impact the way that you see things and experiencing things right now. So I'm arguing that at least the majority of us have experienced these things. Y'all, I'm not really paying attention to the chat, so I invite you at any time to just unmute and jump in. I do want this to be conversational, so please, if any of this is ringing a bell for you, feel free to do that. So with those stressors and traumas and experiences in mind, this is an acronym that I love, one of my favorite, to really kind of drive home the cornerstones of being resilient. Okay, through research, it's been shown that the most resilient people kind of have these shared attributes. The first one is social connection, that we really prioritize staying connected socially. And we talked a little bit about this when I first came to talk with you all. But it's so incredibly important as a pack animal to stay connected to my people or my person at the very least. I need to have a person in my life that I'm prioritizing staying in communication with that can say, hey, Matt, you're struggling right now, but do you remember all the times that you really knocked it out of the park? Or, hey, Matt, I need to offer you some crucial feedback. And then I need to be in a place where I can actually hear that and integrate it. The attitude. This is not saying keep a positive attitude, but more keeping an attitude of object permanence. Okay. And I want to just acknowledge that what I'm about to say does not span all cultures. Okay, this is in some way a privileged type of perspective here. The attitude of this too shall pass. If I can just stick it out, if I can just stay where I'm at and not go further down, then things will be better on the other side. Because for many folks who are marginalized and systemically oppressed or sort of chronically oppressed, it takes action to get through things, right? They just don't have the benefits of sitting through things and waiting it out. Okay.
So on that little note, I'm just going to help you out, Matt. I hate the facilitating by myself too. And if this resonates with anyone, my mom has always told me you can do anything for a short period of time. So along with that attitude thing, and I know that this is also probably a little bit of a privileged standpoint, but if you can think about things in incremental timing, like you said, you can do anything for a short amount of time. Think about that workout that's hard. You can do that workout for just a short amount of time. And then these things eventually will pass. We can't put this whole pandemic in a quantifiable timeline because we just don't know. But we can take a look at this month, and it's almost over, guys. We can do October. October is doable. We can handle that. And then Thanksgiving is coming. And then that kind of goes back to what you were saying, Matt, about the last time, is put things on your calendar that you look forward to. If you can get from point A to point B to that positive thing that you're looking forward to, that's doing the hard work of adjusting your attitude to fit the space of the hard work that you're doing this week. Helping you out just a little bit, Matt.
Almost verbatim what I was going to say, Casey. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, as I was watching that person push his bike up the hill, I'm thinking, where are they going? Right? Are they just trying to make the Loman, or are they trying to make it to Oregon? Or do they not know where the finish line is? And I'm thinking, and that's how I feel. And that's how so many people feel right now, is we're pushing this bike and the universe keeps giving us more luggage, but we don't know where the finish line is, which makes those bags feel heavier, right? Which makes the journey feel longer, which makes me just doubt myself, decreases my self-efficacy. And so just to Casey's point, we have to, and sometimes come up with our own checkpoints. If I can just make it till X, if I can just make it, then the bags become lighter. Maybe I allow myself to put bags down and say, I'm going to come back for those. Okay. The values piece is really doing self-exploration and recognizing what are the 2 or 3 things that I value the most, and then aligning your behaviors in accordance with those values. Nothing threatens our mental health faster than behaving out of accordance with our values. Okay, if family is something that I value and I'm pouring 100% of my energy into work and it's taking me away from my family, then I start to resent work, and I start to grow with that toxic fear that almost always comes out in anger, as we talked about last time. And so it's time for me to take a step back and say, I've got to set some boundaries here and realign my behavior with what I value. The emotions piece, and we'll talk more about this, but emotions is allowing yourself the freedom to both recognize and feel your emotions. When we don't do that, we run the risk of displacement, right? Okay, and so what I want to say about that is, at work, generally speaking, we are just so much more cognitive than we are emotional. We're so much more mental than we are emotional. So we deny our emotional experience at work, which is unhealthy, okay? Because we have a lot of emotional experience at work. The problem with that is that for a lot of us, we're actually either physically at work for the majority of our waking hours, or we're on this screen with people that we work with for the majority of our waking hours. And so I'm not really affording myself the time to feel those emotions. And so what happens is that these emotions start to pile up. And then it's that volcano analogy. I pop and I explode on somebody that almost always has nothing to do with the reason that I'm exploding, right? That's the displacement. It's that emotionally charged disbursement of energy that needs a direction. And so we want to really encourage and reinforce psychological safety. And I'm going to call Casey out here because a couple months ago, Casey shared, hopefully you don't mind me saying this, Casey.
No, I don't at all. I know exactly what you're going to say.
She shared how psychologically safe she felt in the Department of Human Resources at Boise State based on the culture that Sean Miller and the rest of the HR department has really fostered. And you cannot put a price on that. It sets the stage for an employee, a human, to be themselves when they are in this context where they spend the majority of their time. And I'm telling you, that is such a significant help when it comes to your positive or your mental health.
So I'll actually tell a little bit of the story about what Matt's talking about. I recently, and you guys know that we're doing all sorts of fun stuff at my house as far as with the kindergartner and the third grader. And I just moved this weekend, which was super fun to do in the middle of COVID, by the way, is a trip. So I had told Sean about 3 weeks ago, I was like, okay, so I feel like I've been coasting. And he's like, what a thing to tell your boss. And I'm like, well, you've made it safe enough that I can tell you I've been coasting at work. But this goes back to that values that Matt was just talking about. If I give 100% at work, my kids get nothing and I have to homeschool them right now. And so I'm like, okay, so work isn't getting my full 100, and I'm a high achieving like go-getter, and I haven't been at that level. And so I've just been like feeling like I'm coasting, and there's a sense of dissatisfaction in myself with that. But at the same time, I rationalize and I realize I can feel dissatisfied at work and that I'm doing my bare minimum and say that's okay because my kids got all their stuff done today. They were fed, they were cleaned, they made it to dance. I actually accomplished a lot. So when I had that conversation with Sean, he has created an environment in which I can go to him and say, I feel like I'm coasting and I know that you're okay with that, but at some point in time, you're going to have to like tell me when I need to step it up and have those real conversations. As supervisors, it's incredibly important that you understand that like you have a person in front of you and it's not necessarily like that they're not wanting to do 110% or give their all. Sometimes they can't. So let's remember that as supervisors, but then also as employees, let's remember that like to a certain extent, you can be dissatisfied with your performance and know and set goals for yourself about how you're going to step it up as you get more normalized in a routine. Then that was the conversation that followed that I had with Sean, as far as like, okay, once I get moved, once I have a week where we're chilled out, this is what I'm going to start to do. And he was like, cool. And he'll have grace for me as we move forward.
Thank you, Casey. Seeing a lot of nodding heads as you were talking through that. I mean, okay, I just want to finish the slide. So the last one is the sense of humor piece. Research science has shown that a good belly laugh will decrease anxiety for up to 45 minutes. It also does wonders for bringing us together. And so I know that it can be really difficult to find humor in things. And sometimes it even feels inappropriate because of all of the stress that we're experiencing right now and what feels like the mean world, right? But if you set this as a priority, I promise you that you'll be better off. So I want to do a check-in with you all right now before I go further down the slide route. How are we doing? Sorry, I lost you.
There we go. Now we see faces. I'm getting lots of private chats that we're feeling good with the topic. That everything's feeling good. Anybody want to say anything that's resonated with them so far, or how they're finding humor? Because I love humor. Memes have been my favorite. I don't know about you guys, but if you can find some good like 2020 or COVID memes, send them my way. I have a group thread with some friends, and that's how we get through the day. Yeah, Abel, I'm gonna have to add you to our meme thread. Funny videos of animals. Yeah, okay. So that's like one of the best stress relievers. If you like, for those of us, Jenny, I love that you've got your kitty in your lap. Like, they are stress sham wows. So I love spending time with my animals when I'm overwhelmed, but also like finding videos of them doing goofy things really does like kind of cut that tension. What do you got for us, Sunny? You unmiked.
I did. Not something related to humor, but something that Matt said did really resonate with me. And it was, and you too, Casey, actually, it was the same theme of having someone you report to really support you. When I worked in university advancement, which I did for 8 years, I had an interim vice president, that was my manager for, I want to say, a year or two. And I had just had a baby, and my baby was super sick, like in the hospital every week. I had a really bad year. And frankly, I just raised a lot less money than I'd ever raised before. And she was so awesome. We went to my evaluation, and she just said, look, you've had an off year. On we go. and she just, it was frankly most grateful I've ever been. It was just like this pass of, and I think I've served at the university another 8 years in 2 other positions since then, and haven't had another bad year, but I appreciated the humanness of that interaction so much, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah. I mean, like, we all talk about like there are chapters in our lives that are a lot harder collectively as society. This one's real weird and hard. So, I mean, that's just something that we need to be aware of. And some people are having it even harder because they've got like outside of the pandemic and being forced to homeschool, they might have additional things that are going on, whether it be sickness or familial. So just remember this, we're gonna, I talked about this last time, we're gonna end the year with gratitude and grace. And I'll stop talking so you can keep going, Matt. Thanks, Sunny, for unmiking.
Thank you. Yeah, Sunny, that's awesome. So if we can kind of commit as an individual to try to make meaning of our situation, this is a framework, the ABCD model, that I think we briefly touched on last time, but it's all about pausing to see if there's an alternative explanation for the activating event to which you are responding to. Okay. And a lot of the times that has to do with giving another person grace. It has to do with empathizing and trying to understand what a person might be going through. Recognizing that certain systems at this point in time are just broken and there's little that we can do about it, and to not give more of our power, more of our control away to the situation, but rather kind of dispute our initial belief about the events and change the way that we're seeing that. The self-efficacy is recognizing that you are, frankly put, a badass. Okay? You're here for a reason. You've had a long history professionally and as a human on this planet, and you've got a lot of wins under your belt. And we're really bad historians, and a lot of times we forget how good we are at things. But in terms of your wins and your self-efficacy, you have the ability to do so much. And we forget that sometimes, and we get swept up in the moment, and we forget kind of who we are, our inherent strengths, and we get lost in, what should I do? What should I do? And unfortunately, right now in our society, we're being told that we need to rely on systems that are broken, that things are not working well, that we are in fact not working well, and that there's other people to blame for those deficiencies. In some cases there are, but across the board, if we really lean into that, we're doing ourselves a disservice. Okay. And so in the face of stress, we want to remember all of the wins that we've had, all of the times that we have knocked it out of the park in our internal inherent strengths. And I feel like I've shared the rest of these. So to get more specific, managing self-care and surviving 2020 has a lot to do with staying informed, but scheduling your news check-ins. I mean, if you're anything like me, I get 100% of my news from my phone. I don't watch TV. I guess the phone or the internet on my computer. And clickbait is a real thing. And I can be fed slanted news articles based on the things I've read before. And so I want to be very mindful about that. Okay, because I can quickly be consumed by confirmation bias and develop a one-track thought or opinion about what's going on in the world. There's also a lot of really negative news, okay? And that is the majority of the clickbait right now. And so what I'm saying is be mindful of that. I know that you all are, but also set a standard for yourself, right? A time frame to which you're going to say, that's my max for today. I could go down this rabbit hole for the next 2 hours and not even realize it, but I just maxed out at 20 minutes today. I've got my news feed. The world will not end if I don't read more about this until tomorrow.
If you have one of those app timers for any of your social sites, use it. I like to set mine to where it reminds me that I've been on certain sites for too long. It's like, shut it down. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I need to not do that. That if you are not really good, and I'm really awful at self-moderation when it comes to certain screen time. So if I set my timer for 5 minutes and I've been like, you know, on a 5-minute like brain break where I just need to stare at Pinterest for 5 minutes, it will turn itself off, which will then tell my brain, oh, okay, it's either time to get back to work or re-engage with the kids, which is not great self-care because I'm still staring at a phone, but you know what? It's junk food, and sometimes you need junk food.
So I'm coming at this, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm packing a lot into a short amount of time here. And so I'm really zooming out and looking at this through a biopsychosocial lens here. And so the bio piece is taking care of your physical health, exercising. And really, I've for myself, I have reduced that down to one criteria, and that is to break a sweat one time a day. I will fall short with pretty much any other standard I've set for myself. And so if I'm out in the garage and I'm building something and I'm sweating, that's my exercise for the day. If I'm getting up and down these stairs, doing whatever I got to do here in meetings and going to talk to people and I break a sweat, that's my exercise for the day. Okay, I can push it beyond that, but I just want to commit to breaking a sweat one time a day. Sleep, and you heard me talk about that last time, but it's worth repeating. Sleep is the most important thing that you can do for yourself, and a lot of that has to do with the kind of how I opened this conversation, the importance of REM sleep, and it's allowing you the opportunity to reprocess the stress from the day and rejuvenate you for the next day to come. All right. So for so many of us, our routines are thrown off, and so our circadian rhythm is also thrown off, and so our body just naturally is confused about when the heck do I go to sleep? How long am I sleeping for? You usually do X, Y, and Z to put me to sleep because our whole day is thrown off, our sleep routine is thrown off. And so what I'm encouraging people to do is really get back into a structured schedule and stay accountable to that schedule, if only for the purpose of getting good sleep. Everybody needs help sometimes. There's a continuum of emotional intelligence, okay? Some of us come from families that from the day we were born, you were not to feel anything, okay? And if you felt something, not only was it questioned, but you were told it wasn't real, and you were told that it was weak or some variation of that, okay? On the other end of the spectrum, you come from family members who very much prioritize emotional expression and take us to events that have us experience different types of emotional reactions. And then there's us who fall anywhere on the spectrum. And based on our lived experience, we have a degree of emotional intelligence, right? So if I pause right now in this moment and I say, how are you feeling? I can actually come up with words for it. I just saw Lee, maybe is how you say your name, Lee, and you did this, right? At least you've got some kind of barometer on how you're doing, right? Some of us don't have any words to put to it. Some of us don't even take 1 second of our day to stop and say, wait a minute, how am I feeling? But that's what I'm encouraging you to do. I know it can feel incredibly foreign. I know it can feel just overly, potentially grossly simplistic. But in order to keep from being burnt out, you have to do these inventories on a daily basis and multiple times a day. So you know where you're at, you know how impacted you are by the things that are happening around you, and you get a better sense of triggers or indications that you're headed down a path that is not a good one. Okay. And if you need help figuring that out, which so many of us do, because unfortunately in our culture, more of us are on this end where we don't prioritize emotional expression or even acknowledgement, please reach out. Please reach out to somebody and just have conversations about feelings. It's not to say that you have to get into a space where you're feeling those feelings just yet, but just thinking about it and talking about them is going to set you on a better path.
And remember, you have an EAP. So 5 free counseling sessions, and you can use it discreetly. Like, you just have to call the number. They will set you up with someone. If you don't have a connection with the provider they send you, they can give you another one. You have nothing to lose by talking to someone. So please use your EAP.
Thank you, Casey.
That's my plug.
Yeah. I guess I'll just take it out one step further. Here at Health Services, we do see students, faculty, staff, and the dependents of all 3 groups. And sometimes when it's not not you personally who needs the counseling, maybe it's a dependent of yours, we are here for those folks as well, because I know that when I have a family member really struggling, that deeply impacts me as well. So something to consider. And then lastly, the social piece, just staying connected socially. I know that many of you are very bright people and are already doing this, and probably have many more cool and creative ways that you're doing this, but here are some ideas that I've heard and my staff have come up with. Just throwing it out there.
Okay, Marco Polo is amazing. I don't know if you guys are on Marco Polo, but it's hilarious. It's you can send videos and they like stay there. So if you don't have time to respond to it, you can come back to it in just a second. Hadley, I'm on a call. Give me a second. So I'm using Marco Polo a lot in all of this, and it's to the point where like my kids know when I'm on Marco Polo and they will chime in on the conversation as well. And so you could have that can be a really good connection point. They get Marco Polos from their brother who lives out in Homedale, and it's so easy to stay connected even though we're so far apart. And FaceTime too. Have you ever played games on FaceTime? That's fun.
Thanks, Casey. So go ahead, Sunny.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I wanted to ask a follow-up question to the seeking help and counseling and being social and all of that, because it feels like spring and summer have been pretty nice, and fall, and I've been able to host people or go places in other friends' backyards and stay 6 feet away, or wear a mask or whatever. I'm freaked out that it's getting colder. And so I did buy a little portable heater, but I'm like, how long can we manage to kind of do that? I'm frankly sick of Zoom at the end of the day because I do it all day long. I don't want to do anything electronic, and I was never that electronic to begin with. I'm not on social media, etc. I'm like a real-time person. So I would love to hear any kind of ideas around that, how to stay connected if you're not somebody that's going to be online.
So I took up like kind of running and hiking this summer, and one of the things that my girlfriend, I have a very small social circle in COVID, but we get the kids together because kids still need to have some socialization, but I know they're safe and we're safe, and they've kind of like created our little community. It's one of the reasons we moved to Boise, so we could be closer to them. But her and I go hiking most Sundays when my kids are at their dad's, and we've talked about getting into snowshoeing, because hiking makes it really easy to, like, you have one of those and you pull it up when you see other people, but snowshoeing could be another one. Just getting out and going for a walk to reset your brain. I mean, sometimes it's the most simple solutions to things. Like, it's going to be cold. Yeah, but sometimes that cold is good because it makes you feel something other than the stress. So that's one thing that I always loved about the winter, when I had to walk in between meetings that I was really stressed about, because I was forced to experience something other than the stress of what I was going into. I'd be like, dang it, it's cold. And all of a sudden my brain gets to just like do something different. So, and I mean, like, that's the positivity, sees the glass half full kind of person that I am, where I'm like, oh, okay, you get to experience a different emotion. You're annoyed at the cold, or you're cold for a minute instead of like overwhelmed and stressed. But maybe that walk, while it is cold, would be good for you in multiple ways.
Thanks. I love that. I've never been one to embrace the cold, but this may be my year. I'm having a growth mindset.
Honey, I'm all for the parka and the big thick socks and boots, because if it's 80 degrees, I'm only kind of warm. So I feel you there.
You can also gather your friends together and go take a drive and get walkie-talkies, and then you have stopping points and you can get out, social distance. So during the colder times, we've done a lot of drives with people. and that's brought us closer together in that warm environment.
Okay, and I'm like really loving the low tech walkie-talkies, bringing that back. That was amazing, Robin. Yes, please.
Those are fun. So we belong to a car club, but you can also do that, with your friends. We've gotten together. We're like, because we have a blast driving, to different destinations, but we're like, why can't we just do this with our friends? So we did that a lot at the beginning of COVID, and now I can see that coming back, into play now that it's getting colder again.
Well, and there's some like beautiful country in the snow, or even just like in the fall, to go for a drive and experience that.
Mm-hmm. And you can do scavenger hunts. You have a leader. I mean, yeah, you could get really creative with the drives. And that can be local too, if you're afraid of driving in the snow, if you don't want to go too far.
So I'm talking about, see, just the collective wisdom here. I'm sure we could talk about creative ideas all day. It's about staying positive and allowing yourself the flexibility to be creative, though, right? Instead of getting down and fearful of what the winter will bring, regardless of how rational those fears are.
No, they're totally rational, because I mean, like, we've all had hard winters, and we know this one's going to be just interesting and weird. So, I mean, it's good for us to like know, hey, there's a pitfall coming up. How do I get prepared for that? So I fully appreciate Sunny bringing that to the table and saying, yeah. And I would highly recommend, if you're not, hey girls, I'm still on a call. Give me just a few more minutes. If you're not already like going to talk to somebody, now would be a good time if you think that the winter might be hard for you. If you are concerned about how the EAP works, send me an email. I'll talk to you offline, or I'll send you to one of our amazing HR people to talk to you offline. There's just a plethora of resources that we have for you to get you through this. And I know asking for help is tough. Like, I hate asking for help, because it makes me feel like I'm like helpless. I don't know if it's like a woman thing where I'm like, I'm not helpless, I can do this. But I had like the most stressful moving experience this weekend, right? Like nothing really went the way I needed it to. And the kids were driving me crazy. And I had this really stupid thing where I had to get the girls to Meridian, of all places, from Boise for a dance headshot thing that was mandatory. And I was like, how am I going to make this happen? And I swear, I almost had 4 panic attacks. And at one point in time, I'm driving the girls there, left the control of people to just unpack some of my things in my new space, and took the girls to Meridian. And as I'm there, I look at my dance teacher and I said, what would it take for you to bring the girls back to me? And she goes, nothing. I'll do it. I'm happy to. I know you're moving, girl. I got you. The stress that came off me right in that moment, just asking for help and getting somebody to drive my kids back to me so I didn't have to drive back to Meridian, was, I can't tell you, it made my whole night. But I mean, like, if I hadn't have asked for that help, I would have been cranky, I would have been more stressed, and it would have been worse. So I mean, like, just even if it's something small, know that you can ask for help. Soapboxes every once in a while. Y'all are free to contribute.
When I was preparing for the presentation today, there were a couple, there's only 2 or 3 questions in there, and I attempted to get to those. So if I didn't, please, or if anything else has come up for you, I'd love to hear that.
I love getting thank yous in the chats, by the way. Go ahead, Matt. I'm interrupting you all over the place today.
That's good. I guess I think I do think it's important to share that we're all humans. And I know that that sounds so simplistic, but we're all humans and we all have personal lives that we're going through. And sometimes I forget that. I forget when I'm talking to my boss. I forget when I'm talking to the clerk at the grocery store or the engineer that's working on a project with me. And all of us, I find it hard to believe that any of us are thriving right now. And in fact, I think most of us are having our reserves tank just depleted. Okay, and we're looking for anything to help us feel fulfilled again, energized. And if we can lean on one another, I mean, connect to some humanity. I'm not trying to get too counselorish on us, but something that can really positively impact your mental health is being a shining light in someone's life. And so my wife is just amazing and she's so good at this, but she messaged me this morning and said, make sure you ask people, how can you bring joy or positivity to one person around you today? And you know, just captured so simply, if that's something that you set out each morning with, you're going to have a more positive experience through your day. And I'll reiterate this anytime I can, that you never know when you're going to be the best part of somebody's day. It can be so simple as a smile. It can be so simple as just genuinely asking a person how they're doing and then pausing to actually listen to that. But I guess I just invite you to work that into your tasks throughout the day. We have a finite amount of energy. Okay. I oftentimes imagine myself or other people as a cup. Okay. And then there's this pitcher of life out there that just pours things into my cup. And I have to be poking holes in my cup to make more space, right? Those holes have to do like exercise and sleep and some of the other pillars of health that we talked about today. But there also comes a time where I am just at the brim and I have to choose something to dump out of my cup because that life is going to keep on coming. And so I have to make some really tough decisions sometimes. I have to say no to people. I have to put down projects that I'm personally connected with so that I can make more space. This other phenomenon that I want to just sort of highlight is that so many of us, at least based on my qualitative experiences, are walking around right now at our brim, and we do not want to be the tipping point for any other person, right? And so we kind of have this experience where we're walking on eggshells. We don't want to add more stress to someone's life, but we don't want to offend somebody. We don't want to make somebody angry because right now, everybody seems to be right there on that line where they're just going to pop. Okay. Everyone's cup is at this point full. And working to know that, working to understand that maybe that fear exists within you that you don't want to offend is an important thing so that you can start to offer yourself grace. Because what we inevitably do, what is threatened is our own personhood. Like I can no longer be myself moving through life out of fear that I'm going to hurt someone's feelings, upset somebody, or be the thing or the person that pushes them over the edge. And so I have to give myself grace, knowing that I'm going to offend people. I'm not always going to get it right. But in my humility of constantly trying to be the best that I can be is where I choose to exist, right? I don't want to live in this fear. I want to live in a place of hope and love for other people, okay? And so when I do offend, I say, gosh, dang it, I knew I had that in me, and tell me how I can be better. Or I learn from that, okay? But it doesn't stop me from continuing to try to be myself through the day.
Yeah, I like to say that you can't be chocolate, you can't please everybody, and then there's still some people who don't like chocolate. or are allergic to chocolate. So it just is how it is. Like, you can be the best chocolate in the world and somebody out there is not going to appreciate you. And that is not your problem, but your intention is what you can control and what you do get to choose. Be tacos. Yes, Julie, tacos. They should please everyone.
Be a chocolate taco.
Be a chocolate taco. Oh, that sounds good. It's lunch-ish time for some of us. We have about 3 minutes left. I would love to, in the 3 minutes, if there's anything we didn't cover, if anybody wants to unmic and share anything, throw something in chat, we're here for you. We probably will bring Matt back as a regular contributor and maybe breaking down at other topics that come out and stresses. And sometimes, I think I've said this before, it takes about 3 times hearing something for your brain to recognize it. So hearing self-care from Matt 3 times, we might start to get it.
I would like to say thanks, Matt and Casey, for facilitating. This is my first Fireside chat, so it's been great. I love this whole idea of living in hope and love. I think it's such a great place to be. And I have to say, I'm hopeful that out of this whole pandemic, there will come some new creative things. So I'm looking forward to that. And just on a really basic level, I am one of the people that have really enjoyed working from home. I'm fairly introverted, and it's kind of been nice to be in a quiet place. But then I'm also really outgoing and want to be around people. So, you know, I get both of those a little more as opposed to just constantly being bombarded at the office. I feel like I have more time to think, which is really nice. And I hope the university continues to be flexible in that arena so that everybody can be in their best workspace. And I'm not sure that would have come up as an option unless we'd had this really bad thing happen. So that's my thought.
No, Sunny, that's completely valid. And actually, we have a task force that is working on identifying some norms for Boise State on remote work, hybrid work. So as soon as decisions come down, this could be a really good space for us to talk about some of that, and then continued support for those new work models. So thanks for bringing that up, Sunny. And then Lee, thanks everyone for sharing your great ideas, and forgiveness of self is required for self-care. It is. You have to let go of that feeling that you just did the best that you could, and you have to just be like, okay, I did, and give yourself a little bit of grace. I like Matt's suggestion of gratitude. That helps with grace. So make sure to be spending time giving yourself grace, extending grace to others, and also remember what you can be thankful for. On a personal note, this meeting every Tuesday is what powers me through the week. So thank you all for joining, and for everybody who turned on their camera, I can't wait to see you guys next week. I'll let you say a couple words, Matt, before we're out of time.
I just appreciate you all. Thank you so much for coming and participating. And if you ever have questions, concerns, or need support, and that is literally what feeds my soul and is why I'm here. So please just reach out.
Perfect. Thanks again, Matt, for joining us. I'm sure we'll bring you back. Next week, we're going to be talking about the new executive order with General Counsel. We've got Matt Wild and I think Tony Rourke, who are going to talk a little bit about that. So it'll be some more businessy related stuff. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next week. Bye.